I'm a lawyer, 42 years old, with more than 10 years of practice. I've dealt with messy divorces, boundary fights between neighbors, even siblings suing each other over an old car. But nothing prepared me for what happened last August. It was the 25th, hot and still, the kind of Ohio summer day where the air feels heavy. My office door opened and an old man stepped inside. His hands trembled, his eyes were red. Two women followed him. They looked worried. He sat down, cleared his throat, and said quietly, "My kids stole my house. And yesterday my son hit me because I asked for food." His name was John Miller, 73. He and his late wife, Helen, had built a small home on Willow Lane 45 years ago. They'd raised two children there, Mark and Ashley. The place was filled with memories, birthdays, holidays, the smell of Helen's apple pies drifting through the windows. When the pandemic came, Mark moved back in, claiming it was temporary. Then Ashley did the same. What started as a family reunion turned into pressure and shouting. Mark told them the house should be transferred to him and Ashley for safety, in case something happened. He said it was the smart thing to do. John refused at first, but Mark's tone turned dark. "If you don't sign, you'll regret it," he'd hiss late at night. "Don't make us do something you'll hate." Ashley cried, pleaded that it was only to protect them. One night, Helen came to John's room shaking. "They said they'll make sure we never see the grandkids again if we don't sign. I can't fight them anymore." A few days later, they all went to the notary together. Mark stood behind his parents, pressing his hand on his mother's shoulder. "Just sign, Mom." It's a formality. Helen's eyes were wet as she scribbled her name. The stamp went down, and in one moment, their home of 4 decades became the property of their children. John looked at the paper and felt hollow. He thought they were doing the right thing. He was wrong. After that day, everything changed. Mark became cold. Ashley avoided eye contact. Helen grew quiet. Months passed, and then Helen's health began to fail. Cancer, fast and merciless. She died in March. The day after the funeral, John came home from the cemetery and found the locks changed. Mark stood on the porch, arms crossed. "You can stay in the shed, Dad. You like it out there. You always tinkered in that place." The shed was unheated, with a cot and a flickering light bulb. It smelled of oil and dust. From there, every night, John could see through the kitchen window the glow of his old home, the place he'd built with his bare hands. His pension checks still came each month, but he never saw the money. Ashley told him she was paying bills and medicine, but the lights flickered, the water ran cold, and she wore new earrings. When John asked about it, Mark snapped, "You live here because I let you. You don't get to question me." He pushed his father so hard that the old man fell against the wall. The next day, Mark shouted at him again, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "One more word, old man, and I'll make sure you regret ever opening your mouth." That was when Mrs. Garcia, the neighbor, stepped in. She found John collapsed near the shed and took him to my office. He brought a wrinkled folder, copies of deeds, receipts, pension slips. Everything was legal. His children truly owned the house. But at the bottom of the final page, there was a note from the notary's assistant. "Second visit, Mrs. Helen Miller. Amendment discussed." I looked up. "Did your wife come back to the notary?" John nodded. "She said she wanted to fix her mistake. She gave Ashley an envelope before she died and told her to give it to me. She never did. I contacted the notary's assistant, Kim. She remembered Helen right away. She came alone, weak, with a scarf around her head. She said she wanted to make sure her husband would be safe. Kim searched the archives and found a second document, a corrected transfer giving John full ownership again and granting the children the right to inherit only after his death. It was signed and notarized, but never filed. Helen had passed away before delivering it. I asked John if he wanted me to confront them. He said yes. When I showed the papers to Mark and Ashley, the room filled with silence. Mark's face went crimson. "You manipulated her!" She was dying. Ashley started sobbing. "She told me to give it to Dad, but Mark said he'd throw me out if I did." John sat still, hands trembling. Then he whispered, "You hit me. You took my money. And now I know you took her last wish too." Mark slammed the table, shouted that it was all lies, and stormed out. Ashley opened her purse and pulled out a yellowed envelope. Inside was a letter written in shaky handwriting. John read the first lines and broke down. "John, if you're reading this, I couldn't fix what we broke in time. They scared us into signing. I let them take what was ours, but I couldn't leave you with nothing. I signed again. The house is yours. Please forgive them when you can. Love isn't property." I watched him weep quietly, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere beyond grief. Within a week, we brought the new deed to court. The judge validated Helen's last document. The house reverted to John Miller. Mark and Ashley signed an agreement. John would keep the home until his death, and the children would inherit only afterward. John didn't throw them out. He said, "The door stays open." But so does the truth. A month later, I got a call from Mark. His voice was small. "Mr. Reed, Dad's sick again." I think I finally understand what Mum meant. I closed the file but couldn't forget it. Sometimes the law doesn't just decide who owns a house. It shows who lost their home long before the papers were ever signed.